2,968 were 484 abducted in the first quarter of 2022. That's according to the Nigerian Security. This is discountenancing reports of 2023, the first quarter of 2023. I wonder if you've also seen the report by the Kaduna State government on security. So in the area of security, how would you, would it be fair to say that the Muhammadu Buhari administration has delivered on its promise that it campaigned vigorously when it came to power in 2014?
Thank you. Security is something that you must always work on, that you must always also work at. You will never get to a point in the country where you sit back and you say we are now secure and no need to be at the alert again. United States of America, which suffered terrorist attack in 9/11, has it sat back to say, yes, we have conquered? No, it's still on the alert, on the lookout, daily. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. So, security is what a government will always work at, including the incoming one, including the ones that are to come in future. We must always be at the alert on security. And the figures you mentioned for 2022, can you compare that to 2014 of 7,775 deaths? Like I said, one death is bad enough. It should not happen. One death from insurgency, from insecurity, from terrorism is bad enough. It should not happen. But then we should also be modest and kind and mindful enough to say, yes, there's a difference between what used to be and what is now.
Well, Mr. Adesina, as my colleague and friend there, Nyota, has said, I mean, it would be remiss of you to come on TV and say anything different from what you're saying. But, you're a journalist, so you would understand why we are querying these questions, these issues, particularly because there were promises made and expectations that Nigerians had. For instance, one of the major legs of the campaign of the Buhari government is insecurity. And but just in this very month, Mr. Sulaiman Arigbabu of Header Resource Center says, he said, by the time President Muhammadu Buhari leaves office, not too much would have been achieved in the fight against corruption. Now, I'm not asking this question in the light of what the federal government and the office of the president does, or in the offices in the ministries, departments and agencies. Not in the ministries or with the ministers, but in the ministries, departments and agencies. There are more than 1,000, according to the head of the budget, DG of Budget Office. More than 1,000, almost 2,000 ministries, departments and agencies responsible for governance in this country, especially at the federal level. And these agencies are the instruments, the machinery with which the federal government will fight corruption. Unfortunately, it would seem like it is in these ministries, departments and agencies that the presidency may not be able to directly oversee that corruption is thriving. And again, going to what Mr. Arigbabu said, not too much may have been achieved in the fight against corruption by this government, particularly from that level. How would you respond?
Well, thank you. Like security, fight against corruption is also not something you end and you say the end. No, it doesn't happen. Fight against corruption will have to be a continuous thing in a country. Look at countries that execute for corruption. China is one. The fact that that country continues to execute shows you that corruption is not eradicated. It will continue to be a war waged. But the difference is that Nigeria is at a point where corruption now matters. At a time in this country We were told, well, stealing is not corruption. This is not corruption. That is not corruption. But we now know what corruption is. And we now know that corruption is punishable. And another point I'd like to make is that if there is corruption among the people, particularly in ministries, departments, and agencies, it is not the fault of the presidency, you must admit. The people are the one that are perpetuating corruption.
But
and so it is the fault of you and it's fault of we the people.
Well, Mr. Adesina, the point there is leadership is what everything is about. You know, of course, John Maxwell's statement that everything rises and falls on leadership from his book in 2005. So the question around that one then would be, is there a plan, a sustainable plan that the Buhari government, in terms of the fight against corruption, bequeathing to successive governments? The office of the vice president continues to cry that the reason we are not having significant progress, especially in the area of developmental economy, among small businesses, ease of doing business and all of that, is because of corruption. And that is something, the reality that many people from the OPS would confirm. It's something I'm sure you're aware of as well. Is there a plan that the Buhari government is bequeathing that in the next X number of years, these are the things we have to continue to do in the fight against corruption? Because I don't remember any such strong, successive statement that the government of the day has made.
Thank you. One thing we need to realize is that government is not ubiquitous. Government cannot be with us in our homes, in our churches, in our mosques, in our offices. It is we, as a people, that must define our own values, virtues, and our own ethos in our individual space. If we refuse to do it, we can turn around. We can turn around and blame government for not doing it.
Well,
that is one point. The other one is, yes, is the government bequeathing? Yes?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Is the government bequeathing something enduring in the area of anti-corruption? Yes, I'll say yes. Each government defines its own vision. But I doubt if there will be any government that will not consider corruption a serious issue. Listen to all the campaigns. Every major candidate then said he will fight corruption if he got into office. So I doubt if any government will come and it will leave corruption at the back burners. Any government that does not tackle corruption headfront is only expediting the ruins of this country, because corruption is an issue in Nigeria. The Buhari administration fought corruption. The results are there.
Well,
check the figures.
I'm looking for the figures, Mr.
And
my apologies, Mr. Adesina. My sincere apologies. I'm asking for a reference point in the past 8 years, expiring May 29. I'm asking for a reference point. It is in this government that a number of people would remember animals carting away cash. It is in this government that we understand that the accountant general of the Federation was queried for more than ₦1 billion or so. And it is in this same government, from before this government, that the Auditor General's report has never had the teeth to bite and ensure that whatever is lost or unaccounted for is returned. The 2017 Auditor General's report is a reference. 2-point-something trillion naira remains unaccounted for, according to the analysis done by SERAP from the report from the Auditor General's office, which is a government, with a part of government. So, again, what strong statement would you say this government made in terms of fighting corruption? Whom did this government deal with in spite of fighting corruption in a way that people would say, indeed, the Buhari government made a statement that should deter anyone, even though, as you said, corruption could still continue?
Yes, that was the point I was exactly when you interjected. Between 2010 and like 2017, look at the figures of conviction for corruption. Compare it to 2021 and 2022 alone. Those 2 years far outstrip and outweigh conviction in 7 years. That answers your question. This administration has seen corruption as an issue, is tackling it, will tackle it to the last day, and it is left for the new administration to continue. If somebody is accused of something, of misappropriating money in billions, and he has been interdicted and is facing trial, how come it is now the fault of the government? But if that person was alleged to have misappropriated that money and the government looked the other way, that is when you can accuse the government of not fighting corruption. Give me one person, not apocryphal stories like snake ate 38 million, crocodile ate 20 million, 2 trillion is unaccounted for. Those are things that cannot be substantiated. But give me any substantiated case or story, and the government has turned the other eye. It has not happened.
Well, Mr. Adesina, it's a matter of continuous debate, because we recall under the same administration, 2 former governors were pardoned, and in other cases by the judiciary, Nigerians beneath the rung of the ladder who stole less, were giving stiffer sentences. So that debate continues. But since it's a day of reflection, let's look at one of the major promises of the Buhari government when it came to power in 2014. In 2014, Nigeria's economy grew by about 6%. Crude oil production was 2.15 barrels per day. The naira to the dollar at the time was 150 naira. So let's move down to 2023 now and look at the same economic indices. Economic growth is, somewhere around 2%, and even the projection by the World Bank is that economic growth will grow by 3% in 2023. So upon reflection now, can you say that the Buhari government has delivered when you consider where Nigeria was in 2014?
Yes, as at 2014, one thing you didn't consider was that oil sold at over $100 per barrel. It went to $143 per barrel at a time. That's at 2014. But at 2015, when the Buhari administration came, there was also a global crisis, and oil prices went as low as $37 per barrel. It even dropped to below 30 at a point. And that was at a time when oil was the mainstay of our economy. We went into the first recession. Happily, after a year, we came out of it. In 2020, we went into another recession because of COVID. In 1 quarter, we came out of it. So you need to consider what the indices were in 2014 and that resulted to the 6% growth in the economy. And what were the indices in the Buhari years? Until recent, the oil prices went marginally up. The prices were consistently down. And that was what used to be the mainstay of our economy till the president insisted that this economy must be diversified. And we have a diversified economy today. So when you come with those figures, particularly the exchange rate on naira to the dollar, you ask yourself, what are we exporting? If you don't export, your naira will be consistently weak against the dollar. But we are heading to a point when we can begin to export, particularly agri-products. We have started marginally. It can improve. Until you export, your currency will be weak against international currencies. That's one thing we must realize.
But Mr. Adesina, the administration campaigned on the strength of its ability to solve problems. And you cited global economic challenges. Other countries of the world have taken advantage of those challenges, i.e. the Russia-Ukraine war, to increase the fortunes of its economy, i.e. Saudi Arabia, just to mention one that has, thrived amid the global challenges. But Nigeria has been unable to do pretty much the same. The story here is, crude oil theft that has not been significantly dealt with.
When Nigeria sold oil at $143 per barrel, and that administration exited, how much did we have in our foreign reserves? Less than 50 billion. In fact, I think less than 40 billion, 39 point something billion. I hope I'm correct. But it's either less than 40 billion or less than 50 billion. Saudi Arabia that you mentioned had hundreds of billions of dollars in its foreign reserve. That's the same country. That's a similar country where their export is oil. Nigeria's export was oil. They conserved their own money and they built a healthy reserve. Nigeria didn't build a reserve. Foreign reserve was down. Federation account was down. Excess crude account was down. In fact, everything was, to use the president's words, vandalized before 2015. So you can't eat your cake and also have it.
Mr. Adesina, in answering the questions of my colleagues, you've had to do a bit of comparison going back and forth. Yes. Or what did we meet in 2014? Yes. But you see, when you work in an office, and thank God you, as you said, you left the private sector as a management staff, and you know that some people are fired for incompetence. Now, the last administration attempted to return, but they did not, because Nigerians, the electorate, felt they didn't do too well, and they brought in President Muhammadu Buhari. But you've consistently gone back and forth. What were we then? What are we now? But people are fired and new staff are employed in order to move the company from where it was to where it's supposed to be, not to be in the same doldrums and you're having the same conversation. See where we were before, see where we are now. No. The change is so that improvements can be seen. Now, for instance, we're talking security. Let's go back a bit. But before that, I'll read out some things here so that I can respond to all of them. Brazen attacks on train stations, airport, even on the president's convoy. That is there. Now, you might want to argue about that. Your administration promised 15% from the budget for education. That has not happened. You're almost out. You promised to improve in the health sector from 19 per 1,000 physicians to 50 per 1,000. That's in the manifesto upon which you came into power. But all of this haven't happened.
Well, without really holding brief for the party, because the party can hold brief for itself. The party is the custodian of the manifesto. What happened in 2015?
But the president is like the arrowhead of that party.
It's to implement it, but I'm building up.
Okay.
What happened in 2015 was that there were a rash of documents passing off as the party's manifesto. You didn't know which was really from the party, which was from a support group. For instance, there was a document, 100 things Buhari would do in 100 days. You know that it was when I resumed as his media advisor that I asked him about that document. He said, is there a document like that? I said, yes, there is. He said, get it for me. I got it for him. When he saw it, he was shocked because they said in 100 days he would declare his assets publicly. In 100 days he would do this, he would do this, he would do things he didn't know about.
But what I've just read, the facts I've pointed out here now,
yes.
Are they part of the manifesto?
Well, I do not know. I'm not strictly a party person. But I know that each party will have promises before it gets into power, and whoever is elected into power must key in to those promises. But what I'm telling you is that as at 2015, there were a rash of documents which even the party didn't know, because there were many support groups which came up with their own documents.
It would be good that, yes, you are saying you're not holding brief for the party,
yes.
But did you know about the promise to make from the budget 15% for education?
Well, naturally there will be such promises. And you see, a budget is a statement of intent. And that intent is governed or determined by resources. If you intend to spend ₦1 trillion and resources come to 500 billion, what do you do?
Did you make a promise to do 19 per 1,000 in terms of physicians to 50
I
per
do not
1,000?
know. Whoever heads that sector will be
But
able
you were doing comparisons between that administration and this administration.
No. The past is a key to unlocking the future. Okay. So you cannot say it's just a comparison for the sake of comparison. The key to opening the future is the past.
Which is good.
Yes.
But in looking at the past to open the future, you made certain promises. This is what my predecessors did, or this is what this government did. This is what I am going to do. Okay. And now you're saying there was a rush of documents. So in the many documents that there were these promises outlined in the documents
Okay, let me address it this way. There are always promises based on certain realities. But when the realities change, it must necessarily affect the promise. Even in our private lives. You maybe are putting up a building and you have said, by the end of the first quarter, I'll finish it by the grace of God. And then something happens to your finances and you couldn't do it. So, is anybody going to now hold you to ransom for it? Because the expectations changed. So a country can only spend the money it has. It can't spend the money it doesn't have. When realities of the economy change, then you have to adjust and do what you are able to do according to the realities of the economy.
Mr. Adesina, this conversation, I'm sure we will come back to this conversation, because one of the things that in that promise, among the promises, was to modernize agriculture so that Nigerian farmers are not just self-subsistent farmers, but you talked about the fact that agriculture is one of the things that has really improved.
Let me answer that. Are we where we were in agriculture? Agriculture is one of the greatest strengths of this administration. It is. And that is why today we are near food self-sufficiency. The things we used to import, we don't import. Beans from Burkina Faso, do we still import? No.
No, we're not exporting. Instead, we're exporting our people.
No, but
Japa syndrome started in this administration. We're exporting our people.
It has always been there. It has always been there. Japa syndrome had always been there. And there is nothing, like I said before, there is nothing wrong.
We've exported more people now than there's nothing wrong with
going abroad. Yes, if you think you have better opportunities abroad, by all means go. By all means. But it's not a crime.
Wouldn't it have been good to build to create an environment where your citizens can stay and invest here, invest their talent, invest their money?
It's an idea.
Wouldn't that have been a good thing?
It's an idea.
Isn't that part of the reasons why a new administration will want to come in and create an environment where its citizens can dwell and do well?
It's an ideal, but we know that the ideal is not always the reality at all times, and you must face reality. You must. I tell young people, if you have an opportunity to go abroad and you are not going to be a caregiver there or doing many things that you can't do in your country, please go. If you think you have opportunity, one day you will come back a better person and invest in this country and this economy again.
Mr. Adesina, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show this morning. Mr. Femi Adesina is a special advisor to the President on media and publicity. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have you back again before
By the grace of God, as we wind down.
Okay.
As many times as you call me, I'll come.
Thank you so much. Sunrise Daily will be back in a moment.